Good afternoon. Well, I guess good evening. I guess it depends on where you are. So today's day 6 of my 28 Vegans daily video series that I'm doing. I'm doing this to interview and thank some of my favorite vegans that have influenced my vegan journey. I appreciate all those along the way. I appreciate those who have been a part of this. I appreciate those who have followed and supported us and been a part of this since the beginning. This is something that has changed my life dramatically, going from being a former hunter to a animal protector, someone who wants to share this with as many people who will listen. I've said this before, though. One of the things that I have to do, not just as a vegan, but as a man, is I have to reach out and have conversations with ranchers, with farmers, with hunters, because I can talk to all my vegan friends until I'm blue in the face, and it's not going to make a difference. It may, reinforce and reinsure our bonds and beliefs about being vegans, but one of the things that is so important is to reach out to other people who are not. If it had not been for the Gentle Barn rescuing Dudley, my wife may not have got to where she was ready to tell me she was done eating meat. If it hadn't been for my wife strong enough to tell me she was done eating meat, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. I'm not shy about that. I don't hide that. I wasn't strong enough to come to this conclusion on my own. So I really appreciate everyone along the way, and that's kind of my goal of doing this. I want to thank my friends who have been a part of this, who inspired us, who encourage us, and then I want to try to spread some awareness to get some folks who normally either would not have or have not considered being vegan. So that's kind of why I'm doing this. So I appreciate everybody who's following along. So my friend today, Joanna, she just sent me an invite to be part of this video, so I'm going to bring her in here. Joanna is one of our dear, sweet friends, and someone was trying to call in. We'll just ignore that. And we'll talk to Joanna here in just a minute. We'll let this connect up. Hey, there we go. Hi, Joanna.
Hey, how are ya?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Doing good.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you agreeing to come on here and kind of share some of your story and allow me to have 5 minutes to give you some thanks for all the things that you do for animals. It is very important, I think, that as vegans, we support each other and support our friends and our families. When you see someone doing something good, it's important to give them praise and give them thanks for something that's affected your life. So you have been wonderful for Becky and I. We were fortunate enough to meet you as a volunteer at the Gentle Barn in Missouri. And we think you are just one of the kindest, sweetest people that we've met, and we really appreciate your friendship and your compassion. And it's nice meeting so many wonderful people in this journey. So the first part of this is I wanted to say thank you. And I hope you understand what you mean to us and mean to the animals. And I thought I'd have you on to share a little bit of your story.
Well, thank you so much. It means so much coming from you, because you and Becky have been inspirational, not just to me, but all of us at the Gentle Barn who have met you. And you guys are the real deal, and your social media presence and what you're doing on Instagram and Facebook is amazing. So thanks. Thanks to you.
Thank you for those compliments. I have no idea what I'm doing, so I'm learning as I
Really?
go. And I'm serious. Like, I wish I knew how to reach larger masses and larger audiences so I can share my message, because I'm a firm believer of anyone should share their story and their message, because you never know how that's going to impact someone else. There are times Becky and I feel like nothing positive is going on, but we were at the grand opening. A lady approached us and she said, "You're Chris," and she was looking around for Becky. And then she told me her name and told me her story. And simply because we were sharing our story, she was a vegetarian. And originally I was the gentle sheepdog. And I thought, that's not poignant enough. It wasn't just out there letting everyone know what I was doing. And Rochelle shared with us that one day she went to find the gentle sheepdog and she couldn't find me. And then she searched again and she found the vegan sheepdog. And she said it clicked for her at that point, because she always considered herself a gentle person. But then she realized, a general person wouldn't be doing this and supporting these things to animals. And she said that was the last thing I needed. And like, I cried, she cried, Becky was crying. So it's powerful when you share your story, and then when you hear back from someone that your story has impacted someone else.
I agree.
So you have been one of our vegan friends from the beginning, and we really appreciate that. So how is it that you came to make the choice in your life to become vegan?
So short answer is my dog, but I'm not one of those. A lot of my vegan friends have had this special connection to animals from the beginning, and I'm not a natural animal lover, I guess. I mean, I've always had dogs. I love dogs. When I was a kid, I brought home a stray. I had a guinea pig and all that good stuff. And like I said, I had dogs and I loved them and cared for them, but it was I feel like looking at it today, it came from a selfish and self-centered place. It was when it was convenient for me.
Sure.
And then something happened with this one dog that came into my life, Bo. He's still in it. And just everything was perfect. It was serendipitous. He touched something inside of me that just broke me open. And I loved this dog with everything that I had in me. I cared for him. I was completely devoted to him, not just when it was convenient for me, but when it was completely inconvenient. And I loved every moment. And so, a few months into this, I thought, I before that, I didn't even consider animals in shelters, what they go through, homeless animals. I didn't really think about that stuff. I certainly didn't even consider what farm animals were going through. And I started seeing Bo's face in other dogs who weren't lucky enough to have a loving family. So I thought, well, let me volunteer at a shelter. And so a few times during the week after work, I'd go to a shelter and I'd walk some dogs. And around the same time, a friend of mine shared a need on Facebook for a rescue transport, a dog transport. There was a dog in need that was rescued from Missouri. There was a rescue out of state, and this rescue was willing to take this dog, but the dog needed to get there. And so they were looking for people willing to drive these relay transports. And so I signed up and I drove like a leg of transport, maybe 100 miles. I drove from one town to another, handed off the dog to another driver, and this driver handed the dog off to another driver. It was anyway, it was just an amazing thing to spend time, just a few hours of my time, some couple dollars on gas, and I was involved in this amazing thing and helping this dog, and I was hooked, and I still do these transports to this day. But then I started, again, a few months into this, I started thinking that, well, what's the difference between these dogs and Bo and these animals that I'm eating? I mean,
Yes.
don't they have the same fears, the same wants that I do, or that my dog has? Aren't they suffering in the same way that I would suffer? And so, I just felt like a hypocrite a little bit. And I thought, well, I mentioned to you, I'm a slow learner. So it's certainly becoming vegan wasn't an overnight process for me at all. And I thought, okay, well, these animals whose bodies I'm eating at fast food places, I know they came from factory farms. So I know for sure these animals suffer a great amount. So let me stop eating these animals, and I'll eat animals from a friend who raises cows for meat, right? So I'll eat that meat, and that's okay. And then, you're okay with that hypocrisy for a little bit, but then when you know better, you do better, and it eventually catches up with you. And, and I started to feel like a total hypocrite. And I thought, okay, you're going to eat these animals, you're going to see what they go through before they end up on your plate. And so every vegan knows about Earthlings, this documentary, right? And I've researched it, and I knew how horrible it was going to be, but I designated a day. I knew I was going to be home alone. I had a few hours to myself, and I decided I'm going to watch it from beginning to end. And so I did, and it was just as awful, or even more so, that I thought. I paused it several times. I screamed and I cried like a lunatic. I got through it. I finished watching it, and I haven't eaten an animal since then, but I still didn't become vegan. So I was a vegetarian for almost 2 years.
Right.
And making that final step was really scary to me. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know the brands. What would I buy? How would I make it? I was afraid of my family. How would it affect our get-togethers and family dinners and going out to a restaurant? How would I order at a restaurant? I just had no clue. And so I sort of did a little bit research, got to know some recipes and brands and things like that. And December of 2012, I said, this is going to be my New Year's resolution, which I failed every resolution before then. January 1st came around, and I went vegan, and I've been vegan since then, since 2013. And I've made mistakes in the beginning.
We all do, and I think that is important to understand, that making a mistake is not end of the world. It's something we strive not to do. None of us are perfect, and you can't beat yourself up over that or throw your hands up in the air and say, well, I just can't do that. So I'm glad that is a New Year's resolution that you decided to keep. Like most people, most of us probably fail at our resolutions, if not early on, definitely by the end of the year.
Right.
And now here you are, almost 7 years later. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I hear from people, well, you are so disciplined. I couldn't do what you do. And that's crazy to me, because I swear I'm just the least disciplined person you probably know. I can't stick to a diet. I couldn't if I had to. The reason I think that this worked is because it's not about me. I'm not doing this for me. It's about this animal. And so,
Yes.
I say to people, does it take discipline for you not to eat your dog? Well, this is exactly what it's like for me. I would never consider eating Bo. So I would never consider eating another. I mean, I can't even envision a situation where that wouldn't apply. So it's just, it's been the easiest thing.
I agree.
Not difficult.
It's not about discipline. It's about perspective. And you hit the nail on the head. You wouldn't consider hurting your dog any more than you would allow someone else to hurt another animal.
Yeah.
And I think once you make that connection, whatever it is, for me, like I grew up hunting. For me, it was going to the general barn. It was physically putting my hands on Dudley. When my wife had already made the decision, but when I put my hands on him, I could feel his spirit, his soul, his being, and just his energy. And I knew right then I could not continue to contribute to harming these animals. I talk about it all the time. A quote from Philip Wallen: a pig is a bear, is a dog, is a boy. And he talks about they all have the same capacity to suffer as we do. And when people start realizing that, I think it makes it much more difficult for them to continue consuming them. A good friend of mine, he always says, ignorance is bliss. And I jab him back a little bit and say, no, it's just ignorance. And I grew up and I was ignorant about it. I didn't know. Mm-hmm. There's lots of things the meat and dairy industries, they don't want you to know. They don't want you to see what's going on in these slaughterhouses, which is why a lot of times it's illegal to film some of this stuff, which is just crazy to me. One of the things that kind of blew my mind before we went vegan, we were already vegetarian, we were talking to some friends and they said, did you know that cows don't just produce milk? And I was
People
like,
don't know that.
What do you mean? They're dairy cows, right? No, they're not. They are cows that have to be impregnated, have their baby taken away from them every year, so we can have that milk, have that dairy.
And they're pregnant for 9 months, just like somebody else we know.
Isn't that awful? And then, the practice that you see regularly of them sending pregnant cows to slaughter because they're worth more weight once their time is done. At that point, it just blew my mind. Everyone just thinks that, it's a dairy cow, it just makes milk. And they're like every other mammal on the planet. They have to be impregnated, and they have to either be getting ready to have a child or have had a child and have that baby taken from them. Mama cows can cry for their young for up to 3 weeks. I mean, does that sound like something that we should be supporting? Absolutely not. And that's kind of was the last hurdle for Becky and I, that we finally said, you know, we can't support that industry anymore than we can support.
Well, I think people think that farm animals are just, they have a different disposition. They just are too stupid to realize their circumstances. And that is so far from the truth, because, you know, since I've become vegan and shortly after, I just had this need, and I wanted to spend time with these animals who are valued, not what they can do for me, not what their bodies can provide, but just simply for being individuals. I wanted to see them in places where people love them, in these sanctuaries. So I found myself visiting these sanctuaries, and I traveled to Michigan. I went to see Sasha Farm, and it was amazing. I went to Watkins Glen.
Your screen froze for just a second.
Oh,
No,
there you go. You're back.
No. So you stayed in one of the cabins at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, so I went to the farm sanctuary, and it was utopia. It was amazing and beautiful. And these animals were just, it was their home. I was visiting their home, and I just remember being there and seeing these volunteers that work there. And I thought, my God, how lucky are these guys to live so close and to be able to go to.
Well, nothing like a little interruption. We'll see if Joanna joins us back here. I really appreciate her sharing her story and her journey to become vegan and share that information with us. So sometimes you have technical difficulties. There's Joanna. Welcome back. Give me just a second here. Hi, Marnie. Hi, Becky Jo. Hey, there we go.
Hey, sorry, was that me?
I couldn't tell you if it was you or me, but not a big deal. Nothing to worry about. I really appreciate you sharing your story, which is what I tried to start sharing there. I appreciate you getting back on with us. You know, to me, it's inspirational when someone finally makes that journey, makes that connection. You talked about, you know, one of your fears of what are you going to eat? What are you going to do at family functions? How is it going to affect going to dinner with friends and stuff? And once you make that connection, it doesn't matter. So one of my good friends that I go to lunch with all the time, he says, you know, I find it amazing that you can find something to eat almost anywhere. So we'll go to lunch and he'll pick a place. Like, you know, it's one of those things where you hate supporting industries or companies that, you know, support cruelty to animals and sell other products, but it's okay if you go someplace and buy their black bean burger, if you go there and buy, you know, their salads or whatever the case may be. So to me,
let them know, let them expand their menus, and you know, there's more of us out there who
absolutely. I think those numbers are growing, just as you said. You know, things have changed so much 5 years ago, probably even 2 years ago.
Right.
There are so many more products coming to market, so many more companies. I mean, look at Carl's Jr. Carl's Jr., I mean, they are, you know,
White Castles.
Yes, White Castle, having the Impossible Burger. There are so many changes out there, and a lot of that is based off of the amount of vegans that have stopped buying these other products. And otherwise, you know, Becky and I would never go to White Castle. Are you kidding me? She didn't like it before we stopped eating animals. But now, to get some Impossible Burgers, every once in a while she'll say, hey, why don't you stop and pick some of those up? And our kids love it. They enjoy it. So, you know, we talked about this earlier. And so you do transports for dogs, which I think a huge effort needs to be made for people to stop shopping and start adopting for animals. There are so many loving animals that need homes, and I love how you share those. It seems like, are you do it every week?
Every other weekend.
I think it's incredible when we see the pictures of some of these animals you supported
Yeah,
and transported to other places. They're beautiful. And then you also, where we met you at for our first time was at the Gentle Barn in Missouri. You're a volunteer there.
right.
And you were one of the first volunteers that you've been there since the opening. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Becky and I really appreciate our Gentle Barn family. We appreciate our vegan family and our vegan friends. So without a doubt, you know, I wanted to bring some of you guys on, and you're the first. Marnie, who's watching, she's up. She's going to
Hey,
be coming
Marty.
on. So she's going to step outside her comfort zone too. And I really appreciate you sharing your story and stepping outside of your comfort zone. I really had to coax Becky to get on here, and she did a wonderful job.
She's amazing. Yeah.
She did, didn't she?
Yes.
So she did a wonderful job on day one, and Marnie's going to do a great job. Nikki's going to be on here. Chico's girl, if you guys know who that is. And, you know, I really appreciate all the people that have supported me on my journey and on this trip, and it's been incredible. And I can't wait to see what's to come, and I can't wait till the next time Becky and I get to come out and see you guys in Missouri.
We're looking forward to it.
Well, we'll have to, the Gentle Barn in Nashville is awesome, isn't it? Like, don't get me wrong, Knoxville will always have a place in my heart. That's where things started for me. That's where the first time we went to the Gentle Barn when they were still in Knoxville. I miss that location for the idea that it was small, it was quaint, it was very close, but for the Gentle Barn, like they had to get off of that leased piece of property, which I understand.
Mm-hmm.
But the Gentle Barn in Nashville, if you haven't been down there, have you been there yet?
I
Oh my gosh, what a beautiful piece of property. Go down, you can see Captain. It was yet a year ago yesterday that Becky and I pulled him out of this place that was just unbelievable. So very fortunate for you guys, for the Gentle Barn, for helping us start our story and our journey. So without volunteers, things don't get done. So I'm going to really try to start stressing and encouraging people that not everyone is in the position to rescue animals, but we're all in position to not cause harm to animals.
Absolutely.
Additionally, you know, we can't all rescue them, but maybe you can adopt one. If you can't adopt one, maybe you can foster. If you can't foster one, maybe you can support organizations like the Gentle Barn, like Sasha, like the Barn Sanctuary. You know, they're all over the place. And if you can't support them financially because, you know, things are difficult, I get money's tight, volunteer. They need people there to feed the animals, clean up after the animals. And like yourself, you know, you're there on Sundays to greet people who come to see these animals and learn about their stories. And you're one of those folks that get to share that with them. And that's, you know, you said you were really jealous of all these people when you went to these different places. And Becky and I are jealous that we've got to drive like 6 hours to get to either Nashville or Missouri.
Yeah, it was my dream. You know, I thought, how amazing would it be to have a place like this in St. Louis? But here I am in Missouri. How is that ever going to happen? And then so one day, 6 cows in a city slaughterhouse in North St. Louis decided that today was just not going to be the day for them to die. And they escaped and they ran around the streets of
a slaughterhouse in North St. Louis, and that's kind of how the Gentle Barn was started. So unfortunately, we lost Joanna. She may join us here in just a minute, but I really wanted to thank everyone for all the support, everyone for following along. We'll try this again. Let's see what we get. Hey, there we go. So clearly we're having some technical difficulties somewhere. I don't know on which end,
as
but
soon as I start talking, it happens.
well, let's do this then.